My name is Rod Walker, and I work for the family construction company, Hazen and Clark. Hazen was my grandfather, and my uncle and my dad were partners in the company, and when I got out of the service in 1958, I came back and went to work for the company. Jay Grant was my vice president, and George Grant was second in line, I think. I think he was 2 years after me. So. Well, we had labor negotiations, and that's not a fun time. We took a labor strike for a couple weeks, and that was the different crafts always come in with about 3 times what they expect to get, so you just have to take your time and work those figures down. So I would say labor negotiation was the biggest problem we had. Yeah, one thing that we started was, of course, I was the builder's side of the AGC, and we were having some problems just with the bid documents. And so we initiated a program with the AIA, the architects, and worked through a lot of these problems. Started an AIA AGC committee, and it really did some good by the end of my term, and from there on, it was a good committee. I made the trips to the national committees, and that was very eye-opening for me to get back and see what the national was doing, because they really do a good job for us. I'm sure they're still doing a good job for us, but you have to keep those legislators honest, or at least try in that direction. Well, it wasn't bad. I'd say, kind of thinking back, kind of an average year. Problem with the building side, we used to have really a lot of bidders on a lot of jobs that really had a hard time getting through. You might have 10 or 12 bidders on a job, and there's always one guy that embarrasses the rest of us. So anyway, that was probably the biggest problem, on the builder side, the number of people bidding the projects. Well, we had an excellent staff. Sam Guest was the overall, and he was more inclined towards the highway heavy end of it. And see, we had just joined the builders chapter and the highway heavy chapter just 3 years before, and Chuck Hively came over as representing the builders, and so the two of them together, we were, I thought, very well represented. Well, I got into construction because I had an engineering degree, and I got in just because the family wanted me bad enough and were willing to pay me. Well, getting prepared, I kind of reviewed, and thinking back, I guess the highlight, the most fun was the Expo 74. And we got the Australian pavilion and the Philippine pavilion, and they couldn't have had a more fun group of people to work with. We ended up lifetime friends. I still corresponded with one of the Filipino girls that was working, and we've made trips to the Philippines, stayed with those families, made trips to Australia, stayed with those families, and it was just, really was a highlight of my, the most fun time of my work experience. Well, we still, my brother and cousin and I that had Walker Construction still office with my son Ed at Walker Construction. And the biggest change I've seen in the computerization, our bids used to be all longhand bids and somebody in the last 10, 15 minutes calling a change. It was a major deal trying to get all that changed, and now it's just so computerized that it's no big deal. So it's the communications probably. I'd try to get one of my superintendents on the phone. He'd be out in the field, and you couldn't ever get a hold of him. With the cell phones now, you can always get a hold of. The communication is just so different, so much better, and the bid process is better, a lot better. Well, heredity, I guess. My grandfather was president a couple different years of the AGC, and it just was a natural progression that you need somebody looking after you, and AGC did a good job for us, I thought. We had, like Sam and Chuck Hively, we had really good people at the top, and they were promoting construction, and plus, you know, the labor negotiation with the unions, we just needed people representing us. Yeah. We are the AGC.